we're just really, really grateful to Claire. Claire's a herbalist and a naturalist. Lives up in a lovely part of the world on the Inishowen Peninsula. She's a lovely Facebook page which I was looking at, Claire, just before I came on here, which is called The Wild Calling, and there was a lovely quote from it, and it says, "A journey through the wild around us and within us." And that really chimed with me, when I read that, the wild around us and the wild within us. So that just whet my appetite completely, Claire. So
very good.
Lovely words. And also in the description that Claire sent through to Kate of herself. I love this, just the words you've used, Claire, that you found solace in experiencing the beauty of the earth through sight, smell and vibration. And I know you're going to talk about, about that and give people an understanding of where you're coming from on that.
Yeah.
But all really, really fantastic stuff. So we're so grateful to Claire for joining this XR Regen and Wellbeing group to give us a talk this evening. So I'm not going to say no more and just hand over to Claire, and thank you very much.
Okay, Lexi, that's great. Thanks, Emil. Now, just to see if I can get this tech. Ooh, hello. Da, da, da. Sometime soon. It is coming. It's got the spinny thing. There we go. Can you see that now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Now.
Great.
That's Donegal internet for you right there.
It really is, yeah. And I'm sitting right by the box. It's mad, like. But as long as you can hear me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's pretty pictures to look at, but
Yeah.
Right. I'm trying to get this to go on to present now. Do you like my raven?
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
My friend painted that.
So cool.
I said, I need a logo and I can't. She said, what do you want? I said, a raven. And then the next day that arrived.
Beautiful.
And then she sent me the original painting as well. So I'm going to get that framed and stuck on the wall.
Lovely.
Oh, do you know what? It's probably a funny view, is it? Is it only a half a view?
No, we can see it fine. It's just we can see obviously, the stuff around it that you can see, but we can see the image without it. It's just slightly smaller than it would be, but we can see it fine.
Okay, I'll just press it one more time. Probably because I think sometimes when there's zoom on as well, it's oh look, here we go. Maybe this time it will go.
Hey, happy days. Brilliant.
Oh, so cool. Right. Where shall I put all of you? I'm moving you around my screen because you presumably can't see that. Can you just see the screen? Yeah.
Yeah, we can just see the screen.
Okay, so I'm Claire. Thanks for the intro, Alexi. And basically, I grew up in the forest in the Midlands, in England, the Wyre Forest, and I grew up in a plant tribe. I was really fortunate that my dad was a forager as well. He didn't call himself a forager, but that's, to all intents and purposes, that's what he did. And my granddad as well. And I think he must have got it from somewhere. So it kind of goes back. And every day after school, we would be collected and there was a trip into the forest or onto the common, and we would spend hours there. both my parents kind of believed very strongly that we needed to spend a lot of time outdoors, and you know, we would take our shoes off and run around and climb trees and all that kind of thing. Did a lot of swimming in rivers, and so there was a lot of kind of outdoor nature stuff in the household. And my dad would be a strong environmentalist, if you want to call it that way. So in the 70s, when all the plastic containers were really taking off and all the tins and everything, and this brand new freezer shop opened in town, and there was huge tubs of food in plastic, we would sit around the dinner table and my dad would be like, it's going to come to no good, you know, it's going to come to no good, I'm telling you now. And my mum would be, oh, don't worry about it, Chris, because something will come along and the earth will provide an itch and scratch us all off. And, you know, this is the kind of conversations that we would have around the dinner table. You know, it's all like, oh, God, you know, and you think your parents are a bit annoying, you know, and you get to a certain age and you kind of reject it all, and then you come back. And that's kind of a bit what happened in a way. I went off and did all nutrition and science and stuff, and then I came back to like the plants, and I thought, well, I can mirror, you know, sort of marry the two, and we can go off on this path. And then over the past few years, I've been kind of watching what's happening in foraging, and I've come to see that actually if the connection with nature isn't there, foraging actually becomes another form of extractivism. And so I've reorganized my work around how we cannot do that. So, all right, okay, I'm gonna have to put you over to the left so I can get the button. There we go. So a lot of what I'm trying to encourage people to do now is to actually see that we are nature. We simply are another wild being amongst millions. And I think we need to further the ideas about how we can change a destructive behavior by changing the way that we view the natural world. And that includes the language that we use and the lifestyle choices that for many of us just choose to accept. And, you know, even when we say we need to connect to nature, or we want well-being from nature, that is furthering the idea that the habitat is something that is separate to ourselves. Because, you know, we need to connect with nature, with the habitat, which is connecting with ourselves. And so to be in the environment is simply to be at home in our habitat. And it's really only recently that we've become so divorced from that which sustains us, and our very thinking and our language and our lifestyle of this dominant culture just sort of perpetuates the separation, which ultimately is killing us. And I think there's a lot of us who kind of feel a deep longing and a deep need to just be wild. I know before we started to talk, a couple of us were on, we were mentioning that sitting around a campfire and smelling of wood smoke and being out in the open, and how that it's very nourishing. When you've been swimming in the sea, you just feel so alive. You know, it's very rejuvenating. And, you know, I think as well as that, this ever-present grief around the destruction and the frustration socially and politically and economically, I suppose, sort of adds weight to the fact that we need need this connection. And when I say the wild, you know, I don't just mean in a landscape sense. It's kind of within us as well. You know, rewilding is to remember, and to rewild our habitat is to allow and restore that which we need to thrive. And it's knowing that the life force that is in us is exactly the same as the life force in the beetle and the river and the rocks and the aphids and the foxes. And so we're all connected, you know, with that thread of life. So one of the big pieces in environmental activism these days is to dismiss the changes that we can make individually, because that has been pushed so much by unscrupulous corporations, this idea that it's down to the individual responsibility to change the way that they live their life. But now there's kind of been a swing the other way, and it's all about pressure on the government to change policies. And in some ways, I'm seeing quite a lot of excusing the choices that we make now. And I appreciate that a lot of people are very, very trapped and feel very powerless. But, you know, the policies need to change, but also we need a change of heart. We can, you know, there are numerous problems with the notion that a national government, with all the global entanglement and the huge corporate power, is going to in any way bring itself down. And so I think we need both approaches. And, you know, this constant shouting at a government who don't have our best interests at heart, whilst continuing to accept the goods that they throw at us, and their ideas, it isn't actually affecting change fast enough. So I think we need many more changes of heart, and we need to examine ideas of scarcity and abundance, need and greed, ownership and the commons, you know, natural resources and gifts, extractivism and regenerative reciprocity, that kind of thing. And, you know, we also need to look at the dominant culture's acceptance of this idea of linear time and this time that belongs to someone else, and that it's all to do with the notions of progress. And all of these things are coming at a massive cost to our environment. So one of the key practices that I'm sure everybody's heard lots about is cultivating a culture of gratitude. And I think this is a really fundamental part of nature communication, and it's a bit of a game changer, you know, because if we are grateful, if we're truly grateful for every hazelnut, there's a hazelnut on the picture, by the way, then, and we honor that gift from the tree, then we will not be able to destroy that tree for an asphalt road that we don't need, for cars that we don't need. And, you know, so we need to kind of find a way of reaching the hearts of those who perpetuate the myth of our time, that our time belongs to someone else and we have to ever go faster in this pursuit of progress, which is really cruel and deeply disrespectful. You know, building a road through a forest or saying we want to get to Dublin quicker it's cruel. It's not necessary. We do not need to get to Dublin quicker at the price of the trees and the beetles and the microbiome and the soil. So, and I think one of the ways we can get people to even start to think differently is to bring back this idea of gratitude. You know, not enforcing please and thank yous in our kids, but a cultural shift by living our lives in that way. You know, one ritual that has really slipped that that I think every family I knew did as kids was to say grace. And it doesn't have to be in a religious sense, you know. Virtually no one says grace anymore. It's a grab dinner, and, you know, with everybody going off in different directions at different times. And there's something about taking that space, taking a pause before you eat, and that slow down and centering, and taking a moment to consider what's keeping you fed, and offer a simple thanks, you know, sacred thankfulness to the earth, really. And another one that people love is journaling. And there's ideas like keeping a jar, you know, when you're sitting around having a meal. Even if you live by yourself, just taking a moment to write down something that you've been grateful for in the day and putting it in a jar, and then at the end of the year reading back at all these wonderful things, you know, and it cultivates this you know, process and culture of deep gratitude. My child's just come in. She's written something on a piece of cardboard. Hold on 2 seconds. Yeah, well, it's only got to be for you.
Just me?
Yeah, just you eat what you need, okay?
What about Anya?
Never mind, Anya's doesn't want any.
Okay, so it's just...
So the idea of the honourable harvest. So there's gratitude is part of the honourable harvest. It's an ancient practice of indigenous peoples, many of whom still live in accordance with this philosophy today, if they haven't been completely colonized and ridden over. And there's a deep understanding of thanks and gifting, which I think needs to be urgently re-experienced by the rest of us today. And it's this notion that all living beings are family, they're kin. And when we start to see them in that way, our relationship shifts. And there's this giving and taking and sharing and deep honouring. And it's not really that there are rules around picking food and foraging. It's not what you don't do and hard and fast. It's a much more spiritual thing of recognizing the value of the life that you're taking, whether that's an apple off the tree or a garlic plant or whatever it is. And it's this idea that we need to give something back to the earth as well, that if we sustain the earth will sustain us. And at the moment there's just too much taking and grabbing and this ugly cruelty, and we're dying as a result. And so are, you know, millions of other species. Like, I think it's like 200 species a day going extinct. And you know, that's on our watch. We are doing that. So, you know, when we're communicating with the earth and other beings, it's necessary for every change you want to make. So whether that's planting a tree, you need to stop and ask, is this right? Does this piece of land want this tree? Does this tree want to go in this piece of land? If you're in a wild garlic patch and you want to take some to eat, or you're at a loch and you want to take a wild swim, you know, you need to ask, you need to communicate with the other beings and talk to the land and talk to the fish and talk to the plants. And importantly, then you wait a reply. And if you listen, you will get a reply. Although I have to say that if you always get a yes, you're not listening. You're listening to your own mind. So it's a practice. And I think for a long time, I have hesitated to talk about it because in this culture, that's so very, very odd, you know, to ask the loch if it's okay for you to swim there is very seen as very bizarre. But if we do it, if we keep practicing it over time, it makes complete sense, because our relationship with the landscape completely shifts. So the other thing is sharing and gifting. So as the earth gifts us, we gift back. And the gift could be in a form of ceremony, it can be poetry, it can be gifting forwards, it can be sharing your harvest with other people. It can be allowing some of the plants in your garden to be eaten by the cabbage white butterfly instead of, you know, squashing all the caterpillars and being annoyed by it, you know, allowing that, planting extra maybe. And it's also, you know, like if you're out gathering nettles for soup and there's only 3 of you, you don't need masses, you don't need huge handfuls. So you only take what you need, enough for what you need. And that applies to everything. You know, if you're going to the supermarket, do you really need to buy 1 get 1 free? Like, really, do you? Or is the one that you need enough? You know, and sometimes maybe it is appropriate that you need more, or, you know, but it's about being really conscious about it. And then the other part of the honourable harvest is using everything that you pick, being ready, not being opportunistic about it and saying, oh, here's a load of wild garlic, I'm going to pick a bunch of that and take it home, and not being ready to use it and having half of it go mouldy, or, you know, taking 6 apples when you only need 3 and 3 of them rot and you throw them away, or, you know. So it's applies to the wild and the supermarket, if you see what I mean. And the other thing is that this practice comes from Indigenous cultures, and I think that there's a kind of, it's kind of become fashionable in a way to talk about Indigenous culture even. And a lot of people, you know, love Native American art, and they'll talk about Aboriginal people. But if we want something from them and we keep sharing their wisdom and sharing their quotes, it's easy to be extractivist about that as well. But if we don't get involved in the politics of our dominant culture crushing theirs, all we're doing is taking from them. So it's kind of poetry and politics, all mixed up together. And, you know, like, by continuing to prop up our dominant culture, we are continuing to exploit these people. And, you know, that is just immensely destructive. So we need to support them with land defense, language defense, justice. Yeah, it's all political. So the honourable harvest really does apply to everything, you know, art, culture, and wild food, and gardening, and shopping in the supermarket. So it's kind of becomes, so yeah, living a life of gratitude, following the honourable harvest as living practices to take a stand against the extractivist exploitative modus operandi, because it's doing something different away from our normal culture, which, you know, is usual but not normal. Then we have time. Do you like my yellow alarm clock? Ding, ding. So our earth is round. Our life is a cycle. Our rhythms are circular. And yet we try and make everything linear. And this linear way of operating also separates us from nature, because we have stopped living in accordance with our natural rhythms. So we've pushed the rhythms out, and we have stretched time, going faster and faster and faster in these pursuits to save time. And we march to the beat of the clock ticking. You know, we're not free. This doesn't leave us as free people. And I think the pandemic has really highlighted that for us. You know, the minute that huge numbers of people were stopped from the relentless drive that is normally demanded of them, and the time slowed down, and it became this freedom thing, you know. So although we were restricted in our movements, well, certainly here in the Republic, we had some very, very, very restrictive measures put in place. At one point last April, we were only allowed to go like 2 kilometers, like it was, but you got so many people out walking, and people missed the beach, and they missed going to the, you know, and suddenly our natural environment sort of became really important. And you know, the clock, people were posting funny things up on Facebook about not knowing what day it was, you know, and there was this freedom, and it was, even though we were restricted, it was really interesting. And people were outside a lot, and, you know, suddenly missing life. They weren't missing the office. They were missing the people. They were missing their granny. They were missing the forest, the beach. And I thought that was magical. And now we're seeing this pushback, you know, to resume the 9 to 5 and the destructive lifestyles. There's a lot of talk about not going back to that, but that the drive is so strong from our political institutions and the economic situation, and, you know, so it's an interesting watch. But we need to give ourselves time in nature daily, and in order to connect, I think we need to not have our earphones, not kind of take phone calls. We need to create the space so that we're not watching our clock, the time, and, you know, just hang out with the trees, hang out with our feathered friends, sit by the water, and just sit. And I don't think it's just a pretty idea. I think it's actually fundamental to our survival that we create this sense of belonging to the land. Not, the land doesn't belong to us. And I hear that this practice is being used in schools, but I'm also hearing that when they use it in schools, they get the kids to take notes rather than just be. Rather than just say, do you know what, kids, go and lie in the leaves, or go and daydream, and go and listen to the birds, or whatever you notice, and just let them be. It's become this exercise, you know, they have to evaluate what it is they've seen. And I think there's space for that as well, but I think it's separate. I think that has to be done as well as just allowing them to be, because there's so much structure in kids' lives, you know. So I think that's kind of the where we start, is with the kids. So Rachel Carson, Silent Spring, sure you've all heard about it. This is a great quote that, you know, we need the beauty of the earth because that gives us strength. You know, rather than just take. So the other aspect is our language. And I think this is really important, because our vocabulary, the vocabulary that we use around nature and the earth and other animals, if we really, really stop and look at it, the disrespect is is glaringly obvious, the coldness, the human-centered ideas, this notion of dominion and power over, and it really reveals how steeped in separation we are. And the things that we say reflect our perception. And likewise, if we change our words, we change our relationship. And, you know, advertisers know this very well. They know that the words that they use and the emotions that they trigger have an effect on people's behaviour. And I think environmentalists and ecologists and the scientific community really need to get on to this. You know, we've got to stop saying natural resources. They're not natural resources. They're not there for us to take. They're gifts, you know, and they're not just gifts for us. They're gifts for all the other beings. And we talk about fishing stocks. We don't talk about wildlife or ocean wildlife. We talk about fishing stocks like there's some kind of quota for us, you know, and ecosystem services. That's another one. Oh, like it's so cold. Natural capital. I mean, even the word the environment. I don't even like the word the environment. There was a wonderful piece in the Guardian a few years ago by your man, you know, George Monbiot. And he talks about this. It's worth looking up. I think it's a couple of years old now, but he talks about we need to shift from using the word environment to the natural world or the living planet or our home. You know, Indigenous people would just simply refer to it as our home. And, you know, we declare these patches of land, areas of special scientific interest, you know, and you're like, right, okay. So that's scientists claiming that patch as interest to them, you know, and like there's some kind of border around it where the interest stops and it's suddenly not so important, you know, and it doesn't create a connection at all. It's not inclusive language. There's no warmth about it, you know. So words have power, huge power. And what can we do about it? We can rewrite our vocabulary. Now, this takes a huge conscious effort. I was brought up with looking at all these creatures as family. And, you know, even because the dominant culture is that we refer to things as it, you know, but I just read you this. Imagine your grandmother is standing at the stove in her apron and someone says, "Oh, look, it's making soup. It has grey hair." We might snicker at such a mistake, but at the same time we recoil. In English, we never refer to a person as an it. And this grammatical error would be a profound act of disrespect because it robs a person of selfhood and kinship and reduces a person to a thing. And yet, in English, we speak of our beloved grandmother Earth in exactly this way, as an it. And the language allows no form of respect for the more than human beings with whom we share the Earth. In English, a being is either a human or an it. And so, you know, by referring to the human beings that we share our space with as it, this actually reduces our responsibility to the planet because we can separate from it, seeing it as a being. You know, we no longer experience the natural world as a being because we're calling it an it. And it kind of means that's how we refer to things as natural resources. It's how we can get in a digger and scrape open the earth and remove the gold, you know, because it's a resource for us. So I think this ditching the it is something that we can all really work on. And I think we have to be very gentle with each other as we do it because it's so ingrained, you know. And I catch myself all the time. And one of the ways that I write when I do my writing online is to refer to the plants and the birds by name, and I will capitalize. So I will say, you know, for example, I walked up the lane alongside bramble, and I won't use the bramble, I'll say bramble, and I will put a capital letter like it's a name, you know, and this sense of giving other beings personhood. And so Robin Wall Kimmerer came up with a pronoun which was key and kin. So how we refer to the tree as kin, you know, which we all come from the same root, you know. And so I think by assigning personhood to other beings, we then see them as these great teachers as well. You know, it adds a quality. Other Indigenous languages don't refer to other beings as it at all. They refer to them as family. And I think this colonization and imposition of the dominant culture is leading to extermination of language as well as beings and culture. And how we speak of the landscape really shapes how we behave. And at the moment, our behavior is just ecocide, okay? And so I wanted to just give a wee mention to honour Polly Higgins, who died this day 2 years ago. And I miss her. She was an amazing woman. She took no prisoners. She was not compromising at all, but she was very compassionate. And she spent 10 years working on trying to get Ecocide rewritten back into the European Parliament, where it had been originally and was pushed out by corporate interests and, you know, Western governments. And so if you haven't already, you could go onto the Ecocide website and sign up as an earth protector. The flag is still being waved. There's lots of work still being done around Ecocide. And what was lovely was that in 2019, when she was diagnosed in March with really aggressive lung cancer, the first Extinction Rebellion in London took place, and they occupied the bridges, as I'm sure you all know. And on the opening day of that rebellion, 8 amazing, courageous people glued on to the Shell building and daubed "For Polly" all over the building. And a video was taken of the Garden Bridge and this action and was played to her on the first day of the rebellion. And she smiled, and she died a few days later. And it's really serendipitous that the Shell 7, one had no charges. The lawyer actually had no charges pressed against her, but the other 7 are up in Crown Court this last 10 days at the time that Polly has died. And I've just heard that the summing up has happened, and the jury will probably be sent on their way tomorrow. So we're expecting a verdict tomorrow, hopefully. So the timing is really, really interesting. So you can go and sign up as an earth protector. And, you know, we all need to play our part in shifting this. We need a lot more reverence and a lot more love, as well as the politics. You know, we need to rebel, but what that looks like for each person is going to be different. You know, I think at the moment there's this huge thing around rebelling is going and throwing paint at a building or blocking a road, and those things are all good and necessary as well. But I think we need to practice a new language. I think we need to cultivate a deep habit of gratitude and reverence. We need to slow down, and we need to reject the dominant culture that we're all so immersed in. And I think that can be difficult because we feel we're on our own, and we get caught up in, well, I mean, I do. I work hard on it, but I don't think it's easy to be step out of what other people are doing and do something a bit differently, you know. And I think we can get caught up in that a little bit in many different ways. But you know, I think we need the politics and we need the policy change, but we also need the poetry and the art and the music and all these other ways that we can connect to the earth. And I think it's only through having people really, really connect to their home that they will then be motivated. But I think they need the information. At the moment, like, I've lost count of the amount of times people take a photo. There's a road that runs from Carndunna to Buncrana through this bog, mountain land. And, you know, loads of people think it's amazing and beautiful. And I just want to go, no, it's not. It's broken. You know, they don't have the connection to the landscape. And each generation sees less and less, and that's what they get used to. It's shifting baseline syndrome. You've probably heard of it. When I was a kid, we would see so many yellow hammers. You know, they would be really common. And now you have to go scrabbling around looking for one. But my kids will think that that's normal. And so when they, you know, and this is how the reduction of the wildlife is not really being noticed very much, because each generation is seeing less, but that's normal to them. So I think there's some education to be done around that as well. But yeah, I think we need a lot more love, you know, and Polly herself said the change is going to come from love, not fear. And I think we need a bit of both, you know, but technology isn't going to fix it. You know, there's so much greenwashing going on that's going to hold up the business as usual model. We believe we can just tweak things, but actually it just carries on. We can grow a garden and leave loads of it to just be wild. We can go onto the land barefoot. You know, that has a great connecting, and enjoy our feathered and leaved friends. Stop with the neat and tidy. Well, certainly outside the house. Mind you, the inside of my house is very untidy too. So yeah, I think we need to love the earth at a time when plunder is rife, and we need to rebel using that love, you know. And I think that goes for everything, you know, whether it's the shopping in the supermarket or the picking the wild garlic or swimming in the sea or whatever it is. So yeah, if you'd like to chat about any of that. Have I gone on and on and on? I don't even know what time it is.
Claire, I'm just going to jump in there. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me stop this, shall I?
Oh, okay. I absolutely didn't want to say anything when you were talking there. I've written so much stuff down. But the thing that's kind of come through to me, Claire, is your deep wisdom, absolute deep wisdom about all of this. I'm blown away by your insight and your eloquence. You know, about
eloquence. Oh, I've not been called that before. That's fantastic. I'll add that to the CV. Yeah, thanks.
Honestly, Claire, you know, blown away by what you've shared with us there. Didn't want to interrupt a second of it. And I'm sure there's other people in the room who are feeling exactly the same. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. You've touched on so many things. I've written so many things down. I'd need another hour to even